just state your name for me?
Sure. My first name is Whale. Last name is El-Kishari.
Okay. And then what brought you out to the protest tonight?
What brought us out today is we wanted to be in solidarity and stand by the Egyptian people in their struggle for self-determination and political freedoms. Over a year ago, there was a democratically elected president. The election, roughly 26 million Egyptians came out, which is a little bit over 50%. It's 51% of the voting age Egyptians. This election in Egypt was actually monitored by the Carter Center International, which is headed by former President Jimmy Carter. So after they monitored it, if you look at their website, they said that the elections were free and fair and also represented the will of the Egyptian people. So a former President Jimmy Carter gave it a seal of approval. Now, in the last 40 days, the military has come out and they've picked up the elected president. They've arrested him. They've arrested a lot of his party, and we don't know where he is. So a lot of us aren't necessarily pro-Morsi or pro-Mohammed Morsi, who was elected. We're pro-democracy more than anything else. So that they took the president was one of the issues. Now, what's happened in the last probably 48 hours is unprecedented. It's unprecedented in the history of Egypt. Once he was deposed by this military coup, who Senator John McCain stated specifically when he went there recently, about a week ago, with Senator Lindsey Graham, that it was a military coup. When the people went out to protest, peaceful protest, they were in places like Rab al-Adawiyya, which is a masjid. It's a very well-known masjid in the heart of Cairo. And they also went to places like Al-Nahda. Al-Nahda is a meeting place or a square right outside of Cairo University, which is the biggest university in Egypt. These people went out, and what they started to do is peacefully protest. They sat in camps, basically. They started to cook, they started to chant, they set up a small stage, and they were there peacefully. Now, it's been about 40 days. Within the last 48 hours, the military has systematically killed over 1,000 people. Systematically killed over 1,000 people. If you watch the YouTube videos and the documentaries about what happened, it's a travesty. Cold-blooded killing. So what we are here today to ask, first and foremost, is that the Obama administration pressure through their $1.5 billion of aid that they give to this building right here, $1.5 billion the American people give to Egypt, to pressure them with this aid to stop the massacres of the Egyptian people, to stop the massacres of people being killed. As I speak to you today, there are innocent Egyptian protesters who are being killed. Secondly, what we are requesting is that President Obama call it what it is, as Senator John McCain has said, to call it a military coup. And thirdly, today our demands have changed a little bit over the last couple of days. What we're saying is now we want an investigation of what happened in Egypt to see if there were crimes against humanity committed. And so, this is why we're out here today. We're out here today in solidarity. We're out here as witnesses to the atrocities. We're out here as witnesses to the massacres that are happening as we speak, as I speak to you today. We are here to listen to the relatives of the killed and the maimed and the injured. A lot of these people you see here have family that have been killed today. And the gentleman just spoke, and we just prayed something on them. It's called Salat al-Ghayb. It means the prayer on the dead, who that we can't even see, who we can't touch. So again, we are here in solidarity with the Egyptian people and their struggle with their lives for self-determination, democratic process, the right to assemble peacefully, all of the rights that we hold dear to us in this country.
And there have been mixed reports coming out of Egypt. How are you getting information out? Is social media playing a role in helping you stay connected?
There is social media that is on the ground. There's a social media network called Rust. A lot of their cameramen have been killed. We are getting a lot of information from Al Jazeera. We are getting our information from CNN. Also, what has turned out to be an excellent source of information is The Independent in London and The Guardian in London. British media has been covering this much better than American media. Social network, obviously, there's a tremendous amount of documentation of what's happening on the ground with phones and with cameras, documenting, showing the burning of the masjid, which is called as Rabaa Adawiyya, showing the dead. Before I came yesterday, I watched a video on YouTube, a small documentary that you can find on our Facebook page, Operation Save Democracy. As I was watching this, I have never in my life wept as I watched. But yesterday, as I watched the carnage and the atrocities that were being committed against these people who are not armed, I wept. I wept as I watched these YouTube videos.
I know there's great concern for the people in Egypt. Do you have family still there, or?
Yes, we definitely do have family. Everybody here that you see has some family in Egypt. And also on our Facebook page, you will find eyewitness accounts of some of the things that have been happening. We recently got an account of a young girl that is one of my family members. And as she writes, and you can see it on our Facebook page, she said for the first time in her life, she felt like she might not make it home. And she said a man 2 meters away from her was shot. But what was so profound is how she described the reaction of his brother. She said that his brother fell to the ground and put his head to the ground and wept. And she said she heard a wail that she had never heard before in her life.
Oh my goodness. And then, is there any way that you guys can reach out to, like, help help your family members there, like, connect with them, make sure that they're safe, or?
We can still contact family there. Obviously, there's a lot of fear in the country right now. There's a curfew that's been imposed from 7 o'clock p.m. till 7 o'clock a.m. where you cannot go into the street. And Egypt is a very hot place, so most elderly, they come out after 7 o'clock, which is sunset in Egypt currently. So the army has put a curfew on the people, which they cannot leave their homes from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning. So we are in communication with them. We fear for their lives. These are brave people, and they're going out into the streets. If you saw today on Al Jazeera, if you saw on some of the other networks, you'll find that there were millions of people in the streets today. And they're saying that all of these are Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood. None of us are Muslim Brotherhood. None of us protesting are Muslim Brotherhood. And we're not specifically for Morsi. We are against the massacre of our fellow countrymen. And the initial revolution was never meant to have countrymen pitted against countrymen for the sake of what we don't even understand. The election went through, he was elected, there was monitoring. If he was a bad president, he was a bad president. In the United States of Maryland, in the United States of America, if we disagreed with President Obama on Obamacare as an example, and 10 million people went out in the street, it would not give the right to the U.S. military to go to the White House, pick up Obama, and imprison him. These are not the principles that this country was founded on. This is not the principles that I was raised on in this country, and I am appalled. And I am here today in utter disgust of the carnage and the absolute massacre that's happening currently in Cairo.
And so, what will it take to get back to that democracy that, like, the military has come and they've taken over? And I remember, like, June 30th, there was the movement to oust Morsi. Like, what will it take to get back to democracy? Like, will it just take time, or does someone have to come in and kind of push the military out?
I think it's going to be a very difficult process to go back to democracy, because democracy involves a lot of trust. And so when you have 6 different referendums and elections, now you have to understand that the Egyptian people, they voted on 6 items, including the Constitution. I was in Egypt for one of the votes and stood 3 hours to vote. So we're not talking about a presidential election. We're talking about a presidential election, a runoff, and 4 other national types of democratic processes that occurred. So today we say, well, what will bring back democracy? I don't know how you would bring back democracy when 26 million people came out, 14 million of which voted for a specific man, and all of these votes were turned in the trash. And what is the defense of the military coup? The military coup says the Egyptian people came out against Morsi. What about the Egyptians who are in the street till today? Aren't those considered Egyptian people? Don't their voices count? Don't their votes count? So to answer your question, quite frankly, I don't believe that a large majority of the Egyptian population will ever again believe in democracy. And secondly, I believe that any president elected after this coup will lack credibility from the first day he takes office.
I know that this was part of the movement like 2 years ago to move away from this type of military regime. So what is your hope for the future of Egypt?
Well, I'd like to tell you the military regime has been in excess of 60 years. Hosni Mubarak, who was the president of Egypt for about 30 years, was a military general. Now, I was in Egypt during the January 25th revolution, and I saw the thugs. And I can't tell you the euphoria that I felt in Egypt. I can't tell you the respect that I had for the Egyptian people, although I was born and raised in this country. I called back to the United States after seeing their valor, and I called back to the United States after seeing their courage to stand up. And hundreds died during the initial revolution. So after seeing that euphoria, it pains me to see the condition that Egypt is in today. What is next for Egypt? It takes steps. But I'll tell you the only thing that we can think about today, there is no long term. The short term is immediately stopping the massacre and the killing of the Egyptians, the bloodshed. The streets of Cairo are filled with blood. This is first and foremost. Short term, we have to stop the killing of innocent protesters, as this is a country of principles. Secondly, we have to identify this as a military coup, as Senator John McCain has said. It is a military coup when he visited Egypt with Senator Lindsey Graham about a week ago. We have to identify it's a military coup so that we can pressure the Egyptian military to stop massacring people in the streets. Thirdly, after the amount of carnage, what we have to do is we have to investigate and see whether this was a war crime, a crime against humanity. And there are people today who have started this process in Egypt and in Europe to determine whether or not General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who is the current general of the army in Egypt, whether he stepped over the line, and we are sure that he has.
Those are the questions I have. Do you know if there are other protests planned to show like solidarity with the Egyptian people, either here in DC or across the United States or anything?
Yes, there are protests in Chicago yesterday, Houston today, New York, New Jersey, but these protests aren't new. On the 10th of August, we had a large demonstration and march of about 3,500 people in Freedom Plaza. So even before the carnage, even before the killings, we were standing in solidarity with the people in Egypt for their right to self-determination and democratic process. So there will be more rallies. We will continue to struggle. As I can speak to you today, and you can videotape me as I'm talking, if you were in Egypt today, you might be shot, as was the Sky News reporter of the English channel Sky News, who was shot recently, about 48 hours ago. He was killed. Other media people from Rust have also been killed. So I sit here and speak to you today because we are in a country of principles. We are in a country that respects the rule of law. We are in a country that respects the democratic process. So we will be out. We will continue the struggle. We will rally. We will demonstrate. We will march until the massacre of people stops, and that this administration says specifically that this is a military coup and takes steps to protect innocent civilians and innocent protesters.
Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.